go. And we've got that. And I'm going to put an image on here, which will be all familiar. And we've done that. And we'll share this. And we'll share the screen. And basically, I think what's happening is that, yesterday it worked absolutely perfect. I taught the class in the evening. I taught the class at this class as I text everybody that we were going to reposition the class at 6 o'clock. So we did that. We had a really good discussion yesterday. Are we seeing this image on the screen?
Yes.
Brilliant. So let's just do a bit of a recap of what we actually did yesterday as the replacement for last Wednesday's class. I looked particularly at the Avenue and Kirkus monument enigma that we've got in Neolithic Britain. And one thing that we did look at in particularly was the Dorset Kirkus monument. And we explored many avenues yesterday. It was myself, Steve, and Richard. One thing I'm going to do is I just want, because I know some of you missed that yesterday, so to try and keep things flowing so we know where we are, I'm gonna show you a little bit of an image and just sort of present a moment in time in connection with the Kirkus monument in regard to Dorset. And this itself is basically just a bit of an aerial view, and this is what we typically associate with a Kirkus monument in Dorset. And one of the things that we did for a good 40-50 minutes was we examined the idea of these two parallel lines that extend a considerable distance, 10 kilometers. And these two parallel lines, known as the Dorset Kirkus monument, goes up and down valleys. It sort of slightly bends and twists as it does on this high resolution aerial view in front of us. And one thing that I basically mentioned was that when we look at all the reconstructions of this Dorset Kirkus monument, dating back, the original thing was possibly constructed 6,000 years ago. One of the concepts I was trying to put across was this all built at the same time? Was this sort of these two parallel lines going across this landscape all built at the same time? And one of the things I was trying to put across was, if you take away ceremony, ritual, you've got the idea of the line, this endless ditch. And people say it was accompanied by a bank. Well, we've got no evidence of the bank surviving along this Kirkus monument today. We do have banks and ditches associated with the avenue that actually leads to Stonehenge, but all of these types of things are built around the same time. One of the things that we were talking about was the sense of the line, and whether in between these two parallel lines, what did that space mean? Because back in the day, there were none of these Bronze Age mounds within these two parallel lines. There were no hill forts, there were no standing stones, there was nothing 6,000 years ago. And this went basically plowed through woodland, it plowed through rivers, it plowed through valleys, it plowed through everything. And the idea of territory back then, 6,000 years ago, is an anathema, is something that would be really unfamiliar to the people that were actually constructing this wonderful monument going over 10 kilometers across this very diverse landscape. Now, today we have a sense of ownership. We have when we think about something like HS2, it goes through landscapes that are actually owned by people. But back then, the landscape was not really owned by anybody. It was an open landscape, and it's demonstrated by this Cursus monument, which just seemed to plow through everything. So we've got no real idea that things were divided into territorial landscapes back 6,000 years ago when this Cursus monument was constructed. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump. I'm going to jump and try to get us to look at this thing that I deny people talking about, Celtic, right? It's a form. It's a name. It's a title. It's a brand. The word Celtic is a brand. It doesn't necessarily mean to have a native cultural meaning, for me anyway. It's just basically a word that people use to describe an art form. Now, one thing, things are very much changing out there, right? And I'm going to try and link in a Celtic cross into this. It's going to be very sort of all over what we're looking today. This is a carved stone cross at Lindisfarne, right? Now, by using the word Celtic to describe this cross, again, it's not, the word Celtic is being used as an art terminology, not as a terminology to decide a race of people, right? There were no Celtic people. And I'm so pleased that Pete isn't here today, because he'd get really riled. There was a Celtic art form, but there was no such thing as Celtic people. And the reason why I say that is it's very divisive. Nobody woke up one day and said we're all Celtic. No, there weren't vast waves of people coming over from Europe who called themselves the Celts. In our DNA is very, very mixed and very, very everything. Some people can get their DNA tree done. I know Sandra, who does my Tuesday evening class with Pete, she would say that when she had a DNA stuff done, she had a bit of Scandinavian, she had a bit of Scots in there, she had a bit of I think she had a bit of Britain in there, she had a bit of everything, right? And that's the whole point. That is the point I'm trying to make. Anyway, so let's go away from the meaning, the personal meaning of the word Celtic. It's an art form. So the reason why I wanted to do something like this today is the endless line, the knotwork, the sort of this sort of sense of movement, this forever moving art form, this forever. It's circular for a start. You've got the cross form in there, and if you start looking at that knotwork in there, it's sort of endless. That sort of endless family tree of life. And again, this what we would talk about is when we look at the Dorset Cursus monument, why was it constructed? Do we need an answer why it was constructed? One thing that we did on the weekend, down on the land here, we found an incredibly large stone. It was 1 ton in weight. It was dressed on two flanking sides. It had been snapped off at one side and snapped off at the other side. It was equal thickness. It had clearly been quarried, and it was hewn on one side. And that should not be where it is. So when we found it, we found out that the terminus post-quem date for it was actually was about 25 years ago, because what we found underneath this stone was actually some plastic rope. So obviously this big chunky stone, which I'm not going to be drawn into telling you what it is because I know exactly what it is, had been dumped there from somewhere else, right? And I just remember thinking that it'd been nicely dressed. It'd been nicely dressed on either side. It had a nice surface either side. Really special stone. And we decided to move it because it was in the way, because we were leveling an area for some parking. The area that we were leveling was just modern material. It had all been dumped there. And we moved it over there, right? And that's it. That's the point. There's no meaning to moving it from one place to another. So do these cursus monuments that we've mentioned last week, and I've just mentioned, do they need to have meaning? Now, when we go into looking at something like this form of Celtic art, this Celtic art form, and that's what we'll call it. What does this actually mean? Is it directly connected to Christianity? Is it directly connected to religion? Is it directly connected to ceremony? What does this mean, right? And if you quickly go out of there, right, and you sort of go back, you can go on the internet and you can see loads of these things drawn. This is a very interesting, very powerful stone that I've seen a number of times. And you can see that this is the Kaya's Mind stone, and there you got in the middle, you've got like a little bit of knotwork. Is that Celtic? What is this? Again, it's just talking about a sense of style, a sense of an art form, a forever ending repertory form of art. And this is what we're actually talking about. You get these you get this word here. You're going through loads of them here. There's lists and lists, and you keep going and you keep going. There you go, the Celtic stone again, the art form, right? What does this mean? This sort of never-ending that there we go, perfect. Celtic knotwork. Now, what I am going to be drawn into saying is that you can go on a journey there. You can look at this journey, right? This is very similar to labyrinths and mazes. The difference between Celtic knotwork and, for example, with a maze, you go in one end and eventually come out. It's not never ending, is it? You eventually find your way out of a maze. You feel that you can't find your way out, but eventually you find your way out of a maze. But this is never ending, and it's a never ending pathway. It's that sort of it's that recycling itself. So what does this specifically mean? Where are we going with this? This interlaced, it's referred to as insular art. Now, one thing that we can say with this wonderful Celtic work, and we associated with ringed crosses, is something that might actually go back a lot further than we associate it with Christianity, right? So if we again go back to something, if we go back to this sort of where's this Lindisfarne cross up here again? Hang on a minute. Let's see where we are. There we go. There it is again. This is this art form, really advanced. So when we think about this long shaft, and we think about the circular design there with a cross, there are a number of theories as to its origin in Ireland and Britain. Some scholars consider this as being a design that goes way back. In fact, goes way back as far as the Bronze Age, right? So again, art form, Celtic art form, not Celtic people, Celtic art form. Be very specific. Bronze Age, right? Indigenous bronze art. That's the point. Not Celtic, indigenous bronze art that is given the name Celtic knotwork. So what we've got this clear wheel, and this itself has been developed and has been adopted into the Christian sphere of influence. And generally, slowly but surely, this became adopted as something very special within the Christian world. And what we do find is that when you do look and try to understand these stones, you can actually see that there's lots of links, there's lots of other things carved on them. One thing when you teach Pictish art, you usually get it mixed in with this style as well, and you usually get text like Ogham script being used. Here's a little bit of popular legend, going by my notes in front of me. Popular legend in Ireland says that these crosses, this itself, this sort of embodiment of this sort of Celtic art, this itself, it comes from, so apparently St. Patrick invented this form. This comes from St. Patrick. It has often been claimed that St. Patrick, so 1,500 odd years ago, combined the symbol of Christianity with the sun cross to give pagan followers an idea of the importance of the cross. So in other words, it might be that this sort of style, this sort of this embodiment of the past came to us and was reused to actually appeal to this Christianity that we've got in Britain. By linking the wheel and the cross, the sun, this would appeal to pagans, for example. Other interpretations claim, for example, when you look at this, that placing the cross on top of the circle represents Christ's supremacy over the pagan sun. You can see that, can't you? Where you've got the cross, which is over dominating this circle. But what we have done, we've gone actually a little bit further away from where I want to be, and where I want to be is this sense of Celtic knotwork, not just looking at this design. So if you just type in, so if we type in Celtic knotwork, and we go knotwork. Hang on a minute, let's just type that in properly. Okay, the reason why I didn't have all these images up, because I've had to delete them all to try and get this flowing again. You've got this here, so this is repetitory, and you've got some really powerful designs there, and you've got this wheel as well. Now, this wheel itself, these three little wheels, you actually see that being developed within Pictish art, right? So what we can say is, if we go back now, there is, you will now see the link, right? And you will see the link, and it becomes very apparent. This becomes very apparent to the Dorset Cursus monument, okay? And there's a direct link now. So what we need to do, we need to get that up there, okay? And for those of you who missed this from yesterday, what we've got there, we've got the Dorset Cursus monument. There you go. You've got two little plans there. There you go. Two parallel lines. Yeah, two parallel lines. Now, there was a point I made yesterday, and I think Steve and Richard cottoned onto this quite soon into it. Now, if we go Dorset Cursus there, and there is a cross section of the landscape this Cursus monument goes across in Dorset. Remember, it's the two parallel lines. So the two parallel lines there, sometimes 100 meters apart. Some say they can be more than 100 meters apart. But what you can see clearly is that itself is not a straight line. But one thing I've been putting across over the past few months is that a line does not need to be straight. A line does not need to be linear. Now, one thing, and this is a question I asked not last week but the week before, and you know what? And I'm going to pick on Bill now. And Bill, I want a straight answer from you, right? I don't want you to fudge either side. I want you to straight answer that question I asked 2 weeks ago. The question is, if you take away religion, if you take away the sense of territory, if you take away the sense of ceremony, right? What are you left with when you think about these monuments, Bill?
One odd thought came to my mind, Carl, that it's
No, it's not
basically
odd. It's
okay.
not odd.
One
Go.
thing different from the rest, could it be a racing track? They love their horses. It's in the shape of a circus anyway, which is a racing circuit. So they follow the perimeter on one side, turn around and come back the other side. That's outside the box.
Bill, that is outside the box, and we're gonna jump on you a minute, right? That does not seem to be as fanciful as you want us to believe, right? Because if we go with this, now you are thinking outside the box, and I do like it because what you just said is going to come apparent now. Okay, so I do love what you just said. I do love it, and to be honest with you, that's something I haven't heard for a long time, but it's very, very relevant. So what we need, hang on a minute, if we get an image here, and what we've got the other week, what we did, we looked at this monument here within the setting of Stonehenge. We've got the Cursus monument there above there. And actually, people used to believe that they were racetracks. People did believe. The reason why they're called Cursus monuments or circus monuments is people used to believe they were racetracks. So, Bill, when you said it's nonsense and whatever at the start, and I said, no, it's not, because you just told, you're going to tell us it's not nonsense, right? So what we are going to then do, we're going to go back to the image that we already had, and we try and express what we need to do now. We need to bend what Bill said, and we need to come to another juncture. Steve,
is it that it's either it's not quite a playground, but it's a place where the ancestors go?
Now,
I don't mean to live, but I mean just to be.
Right now, actually, I would usually say where the ancestors would be, right, or to live. However, I like the idea of playground. And actually, if you put Bill's idea together, right, if you put the idea of Bill together and make it slightly outside the box and make it a playground for the ancestors, right, a space for the ancestors. Now, that's a really, really interesting one. Now, Bill's idea of racetrack is something that the antiquarians used to talk about. They used to talk about this racetrack thing. But there's one problem what the ancestors used to, what the old antiquarians used to do. They used to say that these were actually built by the Romans. So the problem is, when you say that they're actually being built by the Romans, you've missed the point. And then when you've missed the point, is dismissed. And that idea that Bill mentioned is no longer mentioned, because because the point is, when you fix something within a moment, rather than what Tim Ingold would say, everything is multi-layered, everything has various different meanings, right? And all these layers are all mixed in together and all pushed into the pot, right? You come up with something very, very different than just saying it, than just saying this, right? What we'll do, we'll go back to that image again, right? Where's that black and white one? Hang on a minute. We go back to there it is. We go back to this. I love this one because hang on a minute. We do that. We go back again. Do you know what I like about this? It's there's a ditch. Now, this is typically the ditch. And I know where Bill's going with this racetrack thing. He's going with Uffington on the horse, right? I know exactly what he's doing, right? But the chalking of the landscape the chalking of the landscape, Uffington, for example, didn't come, for example, hang on a minute, that didn't come until about 3,000 years ago. But the thing is, the one thing that we do know is that the horse is a very, very powerful symbol. And there's been a very, very powerful symbol within Britain for a very, 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 very long time. So by using the idea of the horse, by using the idea of the ancestors, by using the idea of the playground, and then what you've got to think about is that, hang on a minute, I've got to put some lighting on a minute. Then what you've got to think about, you've got to try and link all these things together. And I very much, I'm looking at this, and I remember saying this yesterday. I said, well, this is the ditch. How do we know there was a bank with it? How do we know that this wasn't used for 100 odd years and backfilled? How do we know that the original person who thought out this Cursus monument, right? How do we know the original person what they had planned for it was what they were going to do after 100 years, right? Now I'm gonna chuck something else at you guys, and I'm being fair because I'm really making you think today, right? I'm going to chuck something else at you, right? Now this is quite evil, and it's this. Now how do I ask this question without you guessing what I want to? Okay. No, I'm not going to pick on Bill because he's going to give the wrong answer, but he might give the right answer.
I've got another idea, Carl, when you're ready.
I want you to give me that idea because it might be what I'm thinking. Sorry.
What now?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, then. We know now, after a lot of research in recent years, that Stonehenge was used at the winter solstice for huge feasting, where people came from all over the country, yeah? Now, could the feasting area actually be on the Cursus itself, where groups of families, tribal groups, different groups were scattered right along the length of it, where they did all the feasting? If there's any truth in that, obviously some excavations would have found fragments of charcoal or bone.
Right,
So
I've
thrown that into the pot again, okay?
Right, you're okay. Right. That's taking me away from where I want to be. But I'm going to say this. I'm going to answer that in two ways. There's no evidence to say that that when these were constructed, they had any use, because there's no buildings in them. There's no hearths. There's no nothing. Right. So that's one point. However, Bill, right, the meaning and what these things were used for changed over a very, very long time. Right. You mentioned Stonehenge. So what we're going to do, I need to drag myself to the point, but there is a point that you're making, which is quite relevant. So if we do this, we look at Stonehenge, right, just quickly, and we think, right, Stonehenge, right. Nobody sat down and thought about Stonehenge on a Wednesday afternoon, and they said this is what we're going to do. Stonehenge was developed over 2,000 years, if not 3,000 years. What they wanted to do at Stonehenge was very different from where they went to, right? This idea of feasting and all the rest of it, Stonehenge, we're going to leave that one for another day, right? Because I've got a different way of looking at this than you might think, right? And I want to say I want to say something about Stonehenge, right? As I've got this image up there, right? But it links in with what Bill's just said, right? What I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to this. The point I was making was that when archaeologists look
Carl, I'm going to sign off, mate.
Oh, you can't go, Rog.
I'm too tired.
Oh, Rog. Okay, we'll see you next Wednesday then, yeah?
Yeah, cheers, mate. Cheers all.
Cheers, darlings. Next Wednesday. Oh, Roger's going to miss it. Oh, God, I was going to come up with a point. Right. Now, this is a very, very important point, right? And now, Bill, you might appreciate what I'm about to say, right? But don't say anything yet. When archaeologists think of describing the Dorset Cursus monument, they think of it being constructed as two parallel lines at the same time. Okay, so you've got a ditch being dug over there, 100 meters away from the other ditch. So this person over this end, or these people, they go 1 meter, and on the other end they go another meter, right? They go another meter, and they go another meter. They go another meter, another meter, another meter, another meter. This is the way we think these were constructed. But can I allow you to entertain this, right? How about the linear? No, how about not the linear line? The line was being constructed, right? And if we go back again, if we go back again and we think, hang on a minute, hang on. If we go back and we think, so if you look at this image and you think, right, what if they started at one spot and they kept going, and they went for 10 kilometers, and they thought, oh, what we're going to do, we're going to turn around now, and we're going to go down the other end. We're going to have it about 100 meters away. They got no concept of meters, right? So what we're going to have to do, we're going to get to one end, and we're going to turn around, and we're going to go back down the other end. We're going to go back down the other side. What I'm trying to say is that they did a 10-kilometer stretch. They eventually got to the end, and they thought, what we'll do, we'll go 100 meters this way, and we'll curve down, and we'll go back down round the other way, right? Now that to me doesn't sound practical. But then again, maybe that's the way they did it. There's every indication as well, when they were creating these cursus, when they were creating the cursus monument, they did one stretch, as you can see there, and then they decided to do another stretch. They decided to do more. What I'm trying to get at is that it might not have been two parallel lines being constructed at the same time. It may have been that they did 10 kilometers and they turned, or they did 5 kilometers and they turned, and they went all the way back down again, right? So that's another way of looking at it. That's a very different way of looking at it than just two parallel lines that are constructed at the same time. It makes some sense to look at it that way. And we need to go back to the Celtic cross thing, right? And what I'm going to do, I'm going to go on for another 10 minutes. But do you know what? This is all about expanding your minds and thinking differently. I want to show you something, but I want to show you something about Stonehenge. And what I'm about to tell you, you're going to think I'm absolutely barking. But you know what? I've experienced it. Stonehenge. Okay. Let's look at another image of Stonehenge. Stonehenge. Sarsen stones on the outside with capstones, right? Sarsen stones on the inside, 5 of them, the trilithon stones with capstones on them. Okay. Now the carpentry, you've got tongue and groove, and you've got mortise and tenon joints. So if you actually look there, that's a mortise and tenon joint connection for the trilithons, and the other one is tongue and groove connections, right? Now you've got to just let me spit this out. I haven't got an image to show you today because I don't want to, because if I do, your minds will blow. Right. So if we have a look at let's have a look at a plan of Stonehenge. I am coming to a point. Right. So if we do this and we look at a plan, right? At one stage, that outer circle, those sarsen stones all had lintels connecting them. So we believe. And then the trilithon stones in the middle, those, well, basically that's what we've got. Except when it's talking about an altar stone, that's not exactly the case. In fact, we don't really know what Stonehenge looked like. We have no idea what Stonehenge looked like. So if we go back to an area view, and this is frightening. When we were building the roundhouse on the weekend, guess what the roundhouse looked like? Stonehenge. Because I'm building the roundhouse, thinking as a builder and thinking as an archaeologist. And strangely enough, what we've got an outside circle of posts which have lintels on the top of them. And then we have an inner circle that looks very like these trilithon stones at Stonehenge. In fact, what we've got six. We've got the ones in the middle. And what it is, we've got two uprights, and we've got a lintel on top, then space, two uprights, lintel on top, space, two uprights, lintel on top, right? And then you've got the outer circle. And then what we started to do, we put a timber from the outside and rested on the inside posts, which have these other lintels. And then I started to think about something that I used to remember when I was a child. And this is going to sound nuts, folks, right? And could Stonehenge have had a roof on it at one stage? And I know that sounds absolutely nuts. I know that sounds absolute mad, right? But you could get timbers that could go from the outside. You could get timbers that go from the outside set of sarsen stones and rest on the trilithon stones, and then go into the center. And the interesting thing as well is, right, this is where we go. I know this sounds nuts, guys. I haven't lost my mind, but this is what I'm seeing. If you look at that there, if you notice, the trilithon stones at Stonehenge are taller than the stones on the outside. So that means you could bring a timber to an apex resting on these trilithon stones at Stonehenge. I know that sounds absolute mad, but this is exactly how the roundhouse has turned out. I have not thought of building it like Stonehenge. It's just the way it's worked. And
Carl, just a comment. From an engineering point of view, if they can actually erect something like Stonehenge, they could certainly put a timber roof on it, as you say.
And you and I, Bill, are sounding nuts, but from an engineering point of view, it's definitely possible.
Yeah.
I got to say this, right? I was speaking to a chap the other day, right? And he said he was in Cardiff, and they were pulling down a pub in Cardiff, right? And he's got all the they had a delivery of timbers from Cardiff on a huge big lorry, right? And I said, the guy said he's not going to use all the timbers. He said, would you be interested in some oak timbers? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, we haven't wanted to cut these oak timbers up, right? Because they are the length of the lorry. And I actually thought, when he said they're the length of the lorry, you're talking about, I don't know, a small lorry, 6 meters in length. No, the full length of the lorry, right? 20 meters in length posts, right? And when you think about it, Bill, you're right. You're right. You could put a roof on Stonehenge.
Yeah.
I know it sounds. I'm sorry, it sounds so mad, but I'm trying to. You know what? I have not thought like this. I've experienced it, right? And one thing that we do know about Stonehenge itself uses carpentry skills in its engineering. And now that we know that. I'm just gonna let the girls on. This is. I know it sounds quite revolutionary, right? But it would be nice to try and understand what you think, what you guys think of what I've been saying about Stonehenge. So what I want us to do now, I want us to go full circle. I want to again look at some of the Celtic knotwork, right? And next week we've got some delights in store from Peter. He said, I got to look at my notes. What he said, Peter said to me, he said he wanted to introduce aspects of the occult and the pendulum in next week. And I said, no, Pete. And then I said, yes, I want you to chuck it in. Because what we're trying to do here is try to make you look and understand that there's a lot more to archaeology than religion, ceremony, and ritual. There's a lot more. And I have got to, I just want to mention what we're doing next week, okay? I've got to do that. And apologize to Jessica's group there because we're going over. But I want us to draw back to mazes next week and look at that a little bit more. I know we've looked at the labyrinth and I know we've mentioned the maze, but I want to look a little bit more at that because that would then link again with the with this avenue, with this idea of the avenues and the cursus monuments and the Celtic cross. Bill mentioned the horse. The idea of the horse is never ending. The idea of the story of the Mary Lloyd, it's the beginning and the end, and recycling through the different seasons, and that's very important. The Mary Lloyd is very seasonal. You'll know it will come back. Epona, the idea that you mentioned about it sounds absolute mad that you mentioned the racetrack thing with the cursus and avenue monuments. But that's what the original antiquarians believed. But unfortunately, they used the word Roman, right? And then people said they're barking. No, these date from an earlier stage, and they scrubbed those ideas out. The idea of a playground, a racetrack for these cursus monuments is very, very important. It's a physical space for ancestors. It's a representative embodiment of that physical space, and there is one massive thing that we need to do the following week as well, and I'm going to mention this as well for the following week. Hang on a minute. Hang on. Somebody very hang on a minute. Somebody is right. Why am I repeating? It's a representative embodiment. Why is it repeating? Right, it's not now. Somebody must have had somebody must have had the another mic on or something. Right. Okay, so oh, that's totally blown me now. Whoever had the mic on there, it's really screwed things up. I was gonna mention that we were going to be doing something in 2 weeks' time. It's gone. But anyway, so what we're gonna say now is I just want to quickly go back to that image, and I want us to look at the Celtic knotwork quickly, and then we'll call it a day, and we'll be over to Jessica. I was going to say something really important then, and that thing through me, but anyway, I will remember it by next week anyway. So if we go back to where we were, and we mentioned about this Celtic knotwork, and we mentioned about the endless circle of life. Again, oh, somebody's done it again. It's repeating. I'm just trying to, right, okay. Oh, right. Whoever's got their mics on, right, who's just joined us, keep them off. Because it's throwing me. Okay, right. So this idea of the Celtic knotwork and this never-ending circle of life, and I mentioned about this sort of, we were talking about the cursus monuments and the avenues, and that sort of that entity or playground, And one thing I will say, it's physical. These things are physical, but it doesn't mean to say that you need to cross the line. It doesn't mean to say that you have to follow the line. And again, when you're looking at something like this, very much linked in with the labyrinth, when you look at this Celtic knotwork, very much linked in with the maze, when you look at something like this. And again, all of these different things are actually linked. So, so we will be looking at mazes next week. And then the following week, I will have remembered what I was just about to tell you what we were going to do the following week. And there is one thing I would like to look at. The week after that, I would like to look at Neolithic cup and ring marks. And again, the mazes associated with Neolithic cup and ring marks. So that's what we'll do in 3 weeks' time as well. So, okay, we'll call that a day now, and look forward to seeing you all next Wednesday. And if I can ask if there's any questions from you guys. So, Steve, anything you'd like to say? I know that's been quite deep today, but anything you'd like to say?
No, thank you, Carl. I'd just like to explore it for this idea of as never-ending or infinity.
Yes. And the thing is, life is like that, isn't it? And you've got this all these different things with seasonality and all this thing with the solstice and all the rest of it. One thing that I really dismiss, looking at Stonehenge, people go on about the solstices and the equinox, and they say, look at those two stones, it's perfectly aligned, right? Well, if it's perfectly aligned now, back 5,000 or 6,000 years ago, it would not be perfectly aligned. It would be a completely different thing. And do you know what I was going to say? In 2 weeks' time, it's just come to me now, in 2 weeks' time, we're going to be looking at exploring the underground. We're going to put foggy holes in here. We're going to look at souterrains. Bill's been down some of these souterrains and foggy holes with me. The sense of the journey underground, right? The sense of the hidden journey underground, the sense of that line. And that's multi-layered as well. Do you know, when we look at somebody like Tim Ingold, right? Tim Ingold basically says that we've got all these multi-layers and they're intertwined within each other, right? Tim Ingold would also say that below those multi-faceted layers of the landscape, which the landscape itself, you've got the tarscape, you've got all that activity on it, right? There's also underneath that, there's also below that layer, below that concept. And you know that layer below, right, is also represented by those foggy holes, those souterrains, but also represented by the hidden history and the hidden archaeology. So that never-ending line, that sort of never-ending perspective, and this is all very relevant when we're doing this journey now. So yes, cool. So you've got a lot to look at. So again, in 2 weeks' time, foggy holes and souterrains. One sec, have you done everything with that, Steve? Now
I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Right, something controversial: the Celtic cross. The circle on the Celtic cross doesn't mean anything. It is simply an architectural feature, because the bigger the cross in stone, especially the horizontal, the more likely it is to be broken. So if you put a closing circle in stone connecting the four arms in a similar way to a flying buttress on a cathedral, it reinforces and makes it a much more solid and stable block or as a cross. Something to throw into the pot again to think about.
Do you know why I'm laughing? Obviously, you have been listening, and you are coming the way. That is a massive point. This is the thing. We always overdo meaning, right? Why can't it be as simple as just an architectural feature? Why can't it be as simple as an etching on a wall? You know, that is a very good point.
Yeah. Okay, I'm done on that. Thank you, Carl.
So basically, you could say that Celtic art is representative of something practical rather than an art form itself.
Indeed.
Yeah. Indeed, I love it. Indeed, exactly. I'm with that all the way. Indeed. right. I think we lost Roger early on because he had to go. So all I need now is something from Richard. And Richard, by the way, did you like my bit on our dock offices?
Yeah. Yeah. I see a bit on that.
We got the 50th article next week, Richard, and you're the one who's got to take the images,
No.
and they've got to be good. It's the 50th thing for the Barron District News. So yeah,
Well,
anything you'd like to say, Richard?
the only bit I was trying to work is when so we've got these two parallel lines.
Yeah.
So where exactly is the ditch and where is the mound?
Ah, right. Okay. Now what we're gonna this is a really good issue, right? So if we go with two examples, if we go with the avenue at Stonehenge, right? We look at the avenue at Stonehenge. We can see it ourselves, right? So avenue Stonehenge, right? Wikipedia, we may as well because we haven't got much time. Hang on, if we can get some good images up here. Hang on, let's get a good image. We need to see this. Images. Richard, this is the avenue going to Stonehenge. The ditch is on the outside and the bank is on the inside.
Right, I can't see it, but I
Oh no, hang on a minute. Am I not screen sharing? Hang on, screen share,
No.
screen share. Right, sorry, you need to see this. You've got to see this, otherwise you're not going to get it in your mind's eye. Visibility and description is key to this. Okay, so right, so we've got we got it.
Yeah.
So what you can see is the bank is on the inside and the ditch is on the outside. Right. So in other words, strangely enough, you know, it's not following the model that you would associate. There you go. Ditch on the outside, bank on the inside. Right.
Yeah.
Now, if we want to look at how they've reconstructed the Cursus monuments. Now, this is the Cursus monument at Stonehenge. Now, we don't really know what the Dorset one. We know that the Dorset had the Dorset had a ditch, and that's all we got left. Did it have a bank? You know, the point is, was the bank spiritually spread within the field? Because we've got no evidence of a bank associated with the Dorset Cursus monument. But what we do have at Stonehenge is that we've got a reconstruction, right, which I'm going to show you. We do have more at Stonehenge. So if we go with this, and if we go, there should be Cursus. Right, okay, good, go. Where's this reconstruction? You can basically see that there's a ditch and there's a bank on the inside. And I want to go with I want to try and find this. There is a reconstruction here which sort of shows it. It sort of nails the answer to your question. So, if I put reconstruction, I don't believe in lots of these reconstructions. The problem is with lots of these reconstructions, they seem to have these reconstructions which involve everything. Hang on. Unfortunately, it's not coming up, Richard. But what it is again, when you look at the reconstruction, the bank is on the inside. But were they always on the inside? I don't think. Oh, bingo, Richard, there. Can you see that? The bank is on the inside, and the ditch is on the outside.
Yeah.
You can. The thing is, right? That is a reconstruction. How do we know it actually looked like that if most of the bank doesn't exist anymore? This is the point.
Yeah.
And in some ways, when we're thinking about one last thing, I know Jessica's going to be going, oh my God, I want to start. But one of the things that we do know, one of the things that we do know with the Dorset Cursus monument, we don't know if there was a bank. The soil may have just been spread in the field, or actually tossed in the center of the two lines to actually raise up the level. We don't know, Richard. And again, is there any rules? Do we really need a bank on the inside? Do we, or do we just have a bank on the outside? It doesn't really matter. That's the point. It doesn't really matter where the bank and ditch is. If you go to Avebury, the ditch is on the inside and the bank's on the outside. When you look at Hillfort, the bank is on the inside and the ditch is on the outside. So there's no real rules to these things, and they inevitably have different meanings and purposes. So what we're going to do, we will be back next Wednesday. Obviously, we know about the internet problems, and you guys are bearing quite well, and we're managing through this, and I really appreciate your patience over this period. So is there any other questions from Steve, Bill, and Richard before we finish?
No, thank you, Carl.
Right, hopefully I'll see the three of you next week, Richard, Steve, and Bill. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Carl. Bye, everyone.
Enjoy.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye. Bye-bye. Take care.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Cheers. Night-night. 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 Right. Okay. Jessica, over to you.
Okay, Carl, are we doing a new recording, or are we just going ahead with it?
I think you're going to need a new recording because I've got power problems, so I'm not going to be able to stay on. But what we had today, we had because my technology provider isn't exactly British, and I've just paid for the new package. We are having problems, but we were able to sort this out anyway. So what I'm going to do, anyway, everybody, thanks for looking at this today. Don't forget to subscribe and like. Jessica's class will be starting in a moment. So